and welcome to the Emergency Home Learning and More Summit. Today we're going to talk about how to motivate and engage young and teenage learners when teaching online. I'm Dimitris Primalis, and I'm here because I love to share experience. I'm a Microsoft Innovative Educator expert, and I love using technology. Today I'm going to share some experience and some ideas that I used during the lockdown. But before I start talking, I would like you to have a quick look at these statements, and I want you to think of who might have made these wishes on the 31st of December 2019. And obviously they came true. You can write that in the chat box. You can make any guess you want. Well, unfortunately, because this is a recorded session, I won't be able to see what you've written. But I guess the answers are quite easy. If only planes did not fly and children stopped going to school, well, I guess it could be a pilot. Since we will not participate in Tokyo, then no one should go. As you've probably guessed correctly, it's people who did not qualify to go to Tokyo. The owner should put on muscles and beg us to go for a walk with them. Yes, you guessed it correctly, it was the dogs. If only we could stop whoever we want to check documents and find them without explanations, probably some policemen. If I could mute my students, I can see some naughty smiles there. If only all sports matches were banned and all bars closed, I guess it sounds more like my wife. And if only all malls closed, I think I can see lots of husbands wishing that. The reason why we did this activity was basically because when you invite people to join you on a virtual room, you might have latecomers, you might have people who might show up early, and obviously you need to keep them busy. And the easiest way to keep them busy and prevent them from being naughty when it comes to primary or high school students, obviously, is to keep them busy by asking them to participate. And who knows, you might actually get some very interesting answers. But because I'm a frontline teacher like you, honestly, let's share some experiences. Do your students text their friends or surf the social media during the lesson? Do they play online games or listen to music during the lesson? Of course, they're not playing Pac-Man. This is a very common game that I used to play when I was a boy. That was in the previous millennium. Now, most of the games are noisier and they require much more attention. And finally, do your students switch off their cams and microphones during the lesson? Do they seem to be completely absent, despite the fact that you do everything you can to keep their interest and keep them motivated and keep them engaged? This is what I experienced and what thousands of teachers experienced all over the world during the lockdown, and they're still experiencing it. So then we come to the big question, which is, how can I motivate and engage my learners when teaching online? Now, obviously, I don't have a magic wand. I'm not Harry Potter, and I can only share some ideas that worked with my students, and hopefully they can work with your students as well. First of all, we need to make sure that we make the most of what's available. Now, what are the most obvious ones? Pictures, audio, video, microphone. Well, on second thoughts, there might be some more. How about using polls? Using the chat box, the way I used it at the very beginning of this presentation. Presentations, inviting students to share their work. Personalize work more, and ask our students to reflect. Now, we're going to see how you can use pictures in a more creative way and that can actually stimulate reactions from students and ask them to be a bit more productive. I would like to mention Desi Vasileva for the first activity that I asked you to do. I saw it on her Facebook wall, and in fact, on the social media, one can find some very interesting pictures, just like the one that you're going to see now. So I want you to look at this cartoon, and I would like you to complete the bubbles. Of course, you can't complete it on the screen, but you can write the dialogue, what you think they are talking, the blurbs, in the chat box. So I want you, this is the task that I'm assigning right now. I want you to write the what you think the world is actually, what the world is actually thinking. Yes, this is planet Earth, and what the coronavirus might be replying. Now I'll give you 2 minutes, and I would like to see in the chat box what you think they might be talking about. All right, I know that I'm curious to find out what the Earth says. Thanks for the break. Any ideas what break the Earth might be referring to? As you have probably guessed correctly, it refers to the break from human activities, from pollution, from commuting. And what do you think the coronavirus might be saying? You think they understood. In this kind of exercise, there is no right or wrong answer. The very basic idea is to invite your students to participate, to contribute with their ideas, and honestly, it doesn't really matter what the level of the language they produce is. I'll show you what my 5th graders produced. I'll read it because I apologize for the quality, it's just a screenshot. The Earth says that it needs help from us, and it says to coronavirus that he will win. Somebody else wrote, "Hi, I'm bigger than you." Another one replied, "You're small." Another one said, "I think the Earth says I'm sick, and the coronavirus says, ha ha ha." I know that some of you might be concerned about what might happen when students use the chats and they use emojis, or they might be using their native language, or they might be writing comments which are completely irrelevant to the tasks that you have assigned. What I found that might be working is if you set very clear rules from the very beginning. Usually the vast majority of the class follows that. And because they find that through the chat they can actually be actively involved and they can have their own say, which sometimes we neglect in our own classes, obviously they care about it. And what I realized is that the vast majority tried to put pressure on the ones who didn't use it correctly. They kept reminding them whenever they wrote something which was irrelevant. They would reply saying, "Well, this is against the rules. You're not supposed to be saying that. Focus." which was a very popular word during the lockdown, during the online lessons. Now, as I mentioned earlier, it's very easy to find interesting photos. Most of them come from unknown photographers, or so many people share it that you can't really trace the source, but still, most of them are worth being shared in class. For example, this one. What could you do with this photo? That's right. What could the cat be telling the policeman? And what is the policeman writing so seriously and focusing so much? Probably giving a ticket, a fine? Do you think that the cat is apologizing for being out during a lockdown? I always try to find pictures which are related to the students' reality and usually appealing to their sense of humor. Now, speaking about online teaching, I would like to talk briefly about 4 key aspects of teaching an online class. This comes from a very interesting article from Edutopia. You can see it at the bottom of your screen. And according to this article, developing an offline learning plan for students' independent work is very important. We tend to think that online lesson resembles exactly the lessons that we have in a brick and mortar class. This is not the case. Real-time meetings are to be saved for coaching. Another very important factor is responsive feedback. And I found out that whenever I encourage students, at my school we used Microsoft Teams, which allows to communicate with learners through giving them feedback, or in the chat box, or in private chat box messages. And most platforms actually allow you to do that. Whether you use Moodle or whether you use Zoom, you can always give feedback to students. And this is very important because A, they feel that you respond to what they do. So there is interaction, which we're going to talk about later. And it can help you build a relationship, because relationships matter, particularly when there is this distance, particularly when they can't really touch you, they can't really talk to you in person. There seems to be a distance, and this is something most students don't like. So making up for all these problems, building a relationship is one of the top priorities. Right. Now, speaking of activities, in my class, students had to read and listen to a text about the life cycle of a sunflower. Now, the problem that I had was, if you ask them to read and listen to a text, they usually disappear. Now, what can one do to make sure that they're engaged and they're motivated to do things? So I asked them to draw a circle and write on it the most important parts of the life of the flower. I showed them on a piece of paper what I wanted them to do, and I gave them a deadline so that they can show me. Of course, they were a 4th grade class, which meant that they were not very well acquainted with how to send photos back. But I simply asked them to show on their monitor, so that their camera could actually capture what they had done. And this is what some of them had done. I know you might think that, artistically speaking, it's not the very best thing that can happen, but I had students who were engaged. They were eager to share their work with the rest of the class, and some of them were very good actually at note-taking. These are screenshots from that very day, and you can see somebody waiting in the lobby. These things do happen. But in the meantime, it also gave me the opportunity to try and regroup my thoughts, check my plan while they were doing that, and of course allow people to enter the class. Because every now and then you have to do that. Now, earlier we talked about interaction, and interaction plays a very important role in online lessons. Planning different forms of interaction can help, because lecturing obviously is not the very best idea. Now, most of you are fully aware of breakout rooms. Most platforms, actually more and more platforms, Moodle, Zoom already do that. Teams will launch that sometime in November, and more are coming soon. I think even Facebook allows you to do that. They allow you to break the class into smaller groups and assign virtual rooms. Why would you do that? Because students might be missing pair work or group work, because this might give them the opportunity to be more open and share ideas. Let's face it, it's a bit intimidating. Sometimes it's far too intimidating to talk in front of the whole class. You never know whether you are being recorded or not, or you don't really know who's attending. Last winter there were parents, grandparents who would attend classes as well. So my shy students wouldn't actually express themselves openly. However, breakout rooms give you the opportunity to let them work together. Now, some of you might be wondering what might happen if they're in the breakout rooms. Will they carry out the task? The good thing about breakout rooms, whichever platform you choose that provides this facility, is that it allows you to enter these rooms, guide them, facilitate learning, answer their questions if necessary, and then you can join another group and then another group. Now, from my experience, breakout rooms can be a wonderful tool that can help students work together. Some of them miss their friends, miss their classmates, the ones that they would work together, and we all know how important pair work is. But it worked whenever I gave them clear instructions as to what they had to do. And I set a deadline. Of course, I moved from room to room, and I assigned an end product. For example, I would ask them to come up with an idea, to come up with an argument, or a solution to a problem. And I try to create a genuine information gap. If students had to share information, then I would make sure that they didn't both know the answer, and they would have to talk about it. Another idea is to use the chat box to receive their end product. If you think you don't have time to enter all the breakout rooms, you can ask them to share with you, to send you the end product. Now, the end product could be something in writing. It could be a solution to a problem, or basically it could even be anything that's convenient to you. Meaning anything that caters to your the learning aims that you have set for your students. Now, speaking of interaction, of course, one shouldn't forget collaborative writing. You can use Glinoid, you can use Padlet, you can share a Microsoft Word or a PowerPoint. It's very easy if you share the students' emails, or you can create Google Docs, and you can invite students to work together, to collaborate. You can do that either during an online class, or you can do that asynchronously. Technology has advanced. It's fairly simple. and it will give the opportunity to students who are not very strong at writing, they don't feel very confident, to share ideas, and they can benefit from the writing style of students who are better at writing. And of course, you can actually use that to their product, to share it with the rest of the class. Which brings us to the next theoretical point. I know you've had enough with theory. We're going to continue with more activities, but I couldn't resist talking about the flipped classroom. I know many teachers have heard this term coined, and they must be wondering what this might mean. In the usual class, the input is given in class, people work at home, and then they receive feedback based on the work at home. In the flipped class, you flip the whole process. You provide input at home, either through a video or through written instructions and texts. Then you work in class, in an online class in this case, and you also give them feedback. Now, as I mentioned at the very beginning of the presentation, asking students to do reading or listening tasks that require that might be lengthy or that require lots of concentration might be extremely difficult when you do it online. So if you assign it as homework, and if you ask students to do it asynchronously, then you can work in class, you can find out about comprehension, you can even ask them to complete forms, questionnaires. This can be Microsoft Forms, it could be SurveyMonkey, or any other tool that helps. And you can give them feedback when they are in class. Now, speaking about giving them input at home, a most interesting technique is the information gap. You can easily download a video, make sure that you create a copy with just the sound, an MP3 one, and keep an MP4 with just the picture, the animation, and divide the class into 2 different groups, send them the different files, and then you ask them to compare the information they have, to bridge the gap, and complete a task. And this technique works fantastically with breakout rooms. And the good thing about it is that students need to bridge the gap, so there is genuine need for communication. Now, another feature that I found very interesting, and I found that it actually helps students participate more, is try to challenge them. There are all sorts of interesting articles on the internet, like this one: aquarium pleads for public to video chat its eels. Due to the lockdown, garden eels in one Japanese aquarium are forgetting about humans. How possible can that be? Is that real or fake? You can easily ask your students to search this link and decide whether this is real news or fake, a hoax on the internet, and justify their answer. Now, why would you do that? A, because students obviously like to be challenged. B, because you need to help them develop their digital literacy skills. And of course, if they have to do that, if you ask them to do this task, they would have to read the article. So, but obviously they would benefit in terms of improving their reading skills. They would have to negotiate with others, compare information, and finally reach a decision. So obviously we're talking about decision making, and we're talking about 21st century skills. I know you're dying to use your course books, but sometimes course books seem to be completely isolated from what's happening in this world. So finding contemporary issues, things that might actually intrigue learners, and when they're asked to contribute with their opinion, then obviously things seem to be working much better. You might, for example, talk about the effects of the pandemic. What happened in Venice, in Italy, and in many touristy places before COVID-19, before the pandemic, and what's happening now. What are the effects on tourism, and what are the effects on nature? How about the canals? What about the pollution that tourists brought with them? You can compare the canals on the left with the canal on the right. And if your students cannot see that very clearly, oops, you can even see native species coming back. Is that a native species? I never knew that crocodiles live in Venice, right? Or in Italy. So these visuals are a very good opportunity, asking students to compare, contrast them, use their critical thinking, and invite them to contribute their opinions. They can do that either on the chat, or they can do it on the school blog, or you can even invite them to have a debate. Now, obviously, being locked down means that many people wish they could escape. So this is exactly what we're going to do now. We're going to escape. Now, where do you think this place might be? And, right, let me see some ideas in the chat box. And where do you think this staircase is leading to? Probably Egypt, that's right. What you can see there is just a photo, but you can easily have a virtual tour of many archaeological sites. I'm using my browser now, and we're visiting a burial site. Let's maximize that. Let's have full screen, and well, maybe I can give you a guided tour. Maybe you can guide me. How about typing in the chat box where you would like me to go? Right or left? Shall I go closer? All right. Okay. Now, what does this look like? Yes, it's a burial chamber, and this is the staircase that we saw in the previous picture. Now, who might be buried here? Do you think this person was important? All right. Oh, there's a sarcophagus there. Okay. Now, when do you think this burial took place? And who is this person? Alright, we have just returned back to from my browser to my PowerPoint. And the question is, what can students visit virtually? They can explore museums, they can go on a virtual tour of big cities, space, which is great. Depending on their interest, you can actually ask them to complete a survey, and following their preferences, you can decide which ones to follow. But the question though is, what tasks can you actually do with your students there? I'll give you a few seconds, I'll give you 30 seconds to write down 2 or 3 things that students can do with these virtual tours. And I would like you to think of it in terms of language production and in terms of receptive skills as well. Unfortunately, I cannot see your answers, but I'm sure you can come up with some very interesting answers. Right, now I think I can share mine. You can only visit 5 exhibits, decide on the best ones. You can divide learners into groups, and each group can be assigned different museums or different sites to visit. They can only visit 5 exhibits, which means that they have to do their homework, do some reading beforehand, decide on the best ones. That involves some negotiation and some decision making. You have only half an hour. Which places or landmarks would you visit and why? This is a very nice task for those who choose to go on virtual tours of cities or towns. Present these places, these exhibits, these landmarks to your mates. Write a short guide. Create a vlog. And because most students are tech experts, most of the times they come up with all sorts of special effects at the back. And to be honest, it doesn't really matter if something, technically speaking, is perfect or not. The very basic idea is to invite your students to be creative, to use their imagination, and personalize the task. Make sure that they can come up with something personal. For example, their recommendation, or their favorite place and why they would go there. On Greek television and on other televisions all over the world, I know that there are programs which are very, very popular, and they talk about different destinations. You could also do that as well. Now, speaking of personalization and creation, you can invite students to write to a school blog. You can invite students to write to the school's learning management system, or you can invite them to Flipgrid. Flipgrid is a tool which allows students to record short videos. Most of them are acquainted with creating videos because of TikTok. But Flipgrid is a safe tool. It gives them about 1.5 minutes to talk about a topic that you have set, and it's ideal for debates. It is ideal to help your students prepare for non-stop talking for about 1.5 minutes. The good thing about it is that students can actually record it again and again if they don't feel they have reached the standard they were aiming at. Which means that it allows them to practice again and again. And in most cases, students provide feedback to themselves. They can judge by themselves their progress, and they work on that. Now, speaking of creation, using digital puppets can actually help your students become creative. And this can be done in a non-intrusive way. Have you ever had students who were too shy to speak in class? Well, when you use puppets, in this case we use digital puppets. This is a program called Puppet Pulse, and it's available on iOS, and I think recently it came on Android, but I wouldn't actually swear on that, but I think it has been made available. I think it's worth searching. I invited my students to create a dialogue. Now, the good thing about it is that they can choose their own puppets. they can move them and they can record the dialogue again and again and again. Let's have a quick look at the sample.
We cannot find calendars because we need them to make paper, wood for furniture, and many people work in the lodging industry. I see your point, but I disagree because if we cut trees, we haven't got oxygen. Okay.
Well, obviously, there was some of the two students felt a bit awkward, but it was excellent as a way of practicing turn taking, having a dialogue. And the good thing about puppets is that students feel that if for some reason they're not good enough, it's the character they impersonate that doesn't do well. If they do well, they seem to be getting the credit, which is something they enjoy. In times of lockdown, they can easily do that with their parents, which is an extra opportunity for parents to spend time with their children. And because most parents now speak English, I think it gives them the opportunity to spend time together doing something creatively in English. Now, at the very beginning of the presentation, we talked about reflection and the idea, the need to share thoughts. I repeatedly asked my students to share their thoughts. How different is your life now compared to 2 months ago? Write about your life. Is it easier or harder? Is it more difficult, more comfortable, more convenient? Try to give examples. This is what my students shared on the school's learning management system. For GDPR reasons, I can't share their names, but I think it's quite evident that they were involved. The students, you can see that they're not of the same level. Some of them were stronger, some others were weaker, but what really fascinated me was that they all wanted to express their views. Yes, all right, I allowed some emojis, simply because it made them happy, but as you can see, there's quite a lot of language production. I tried not to intervene, and I tried not to correct mistakes. And if I did that in a very gentle way, simply because I wanted them to feel safe. I wanted them to feel that it's okay if they make some mistakes. Obviously, it's the message that counts, it's communication that counts. But on the other hand, it gave me valuable information about what my students need to work more on. And of course, in later sessions, I worked on them, on their weaknesses. Now, time for some action. I know that you feel your hands are itchy, you've had enough with my talking. Now, I want you to grab a piece of paper and a pencil or a marker. Okay, I want a piece of paper and a marker, and I want you, this is an activity I did with my third graders, I would like you to draw a big circle at the center of the paper, a big circle. And on top of that circle, I would like you to draw 2 triangles, 2 small triangles, not very close to each other. Now I would like you at the center of the circle to draw a small circle, very small circle. And above this circle, I want you to draw two ovals, two oval shapes. One on the right and one on the left, above the small circle. Now, at the bottom of its oval shape, I would like you to draw a big dot, a big black circle. Did I say big? No, let's make it small. A small black dot or circle. Now, below the circle in the center, I want you to draw a crescent. I want you to draw a crescent. Now, look again at the small circle in the center. I want you to draw 3 straight lines on the right and 3 straight lines on the left. I'll repeat that. At the very center of the circle, I want you to draw 3 straight lines to the right, from the circle to the right, and 3 straight lines to the left. Now, what have you got there? Can you share it with us? Unfortunately, I cannot see that. But I suspect that you have created something like that, a cat. That was a fun activity that my students loved. It was hands-on. We practiced the shapes because we had just learned the shapes. And it was a very good opportunity for them to do something instead of just listening to me. Now, speaking of activities, I know that we are all dying for activities. We want activities that are not static, they're not mechanistic, activities that can help our students participate, that can engage them, and they can help them feel that they are part of a community. Here are some of them. Charades, Pictionary, 2 truths and a lie. Tell your partner or tell the class, tell your partner if they're in a breakout room, or tell the rest of the class 2 truths and a lie, and let the class decide which are the truths and which is a lie. Would you rather be a tiger or a mouse? Why? Share with the class or share with the people in the same breakout room what you would like to be and why. Change your screen background and talk to us about it. Is it space? Why is it space? And where would you like to go? Is it a sunset? Why did you choose a sunset? And where would this sunset be? When are you planning to go there? How could you go there? Speaking of truths and lies, here's my favorite activity. Ask your students to share a photo that they like and invite them to tell the story behind this photo. Before they do that, ask them to text you in the chat, in private chat, whether the story they're going to tell is real or fake. Invite them one at a time to share their story with the class. Share the photo and share the picture, and share their story. And after that, invite the class to decide whether the story was real or fake. Now, let me give you an example. A few years ago, I was on an exotic island called Zakynthos. Now, the island is well known for its turtles, and I went to that beautiful spot which overlooks these rocks and the sea. And as I was looking down the cliff in the sea, I saw something which looked like a turtle. But then when I looked closely, I thought it looked more like a fish. But in fact, I thought I saw something which looked like long hair. Now, my friends wouldn't believe me, and they challenged me. They said that I make things out of my mind. So basically, I swam with my underwater camera. I practically dived from the cliff, and I swam in the deep water trying to find this creature. Now, I took a photo of it, but unfortunately, on my way up to the surface, I lost the camera. So now I cannot prove that there are other creatures and those apart from turtles. Now, what do you think? Was that real or fake? Well, obviously, it was a fake story. There are no mermaids. There are many turtles and those, no mermaids, as far as I know. However, asking students to share their narratives does help them with narrating stories. It helps them to talk about personal experiences. The only tip I can give in this activity is that students need to feel that they can share this photo. It shouldn't be something very private, or if they don't want to talk about it, they shouldn't share it at all. Other than that, whenever I tried that in class or in online class, students loved it simply because there's a personal element, there's personalization, and everybody's interested in finding out about other people's lives. Let alone the fact that most students take photos with their mobile phones, with their tablets, non-stop, and they literally have hundreds, if not thousands of photos that they would like to share with their friends. They already do that on the social media. Now, this is my browser. Another favorite activity, I borrowed that from Nick Beattie's blog, is a tool called, there is a tool called Random Word Generator. Now, what this tool does is it produces randomly either words or it could be a noun, a verb, a name, sentence, a phrase, number, or letter. I love the sentence part. I invite my students to start a story with the phrase or the sentence that's produced randomly. For example, when he had a picnic on the beach, he purposely put sand in other people's food. Now, why would he do that? Who might this person be? And what might be their reaction? The good thing about it is that you only have to press a button and it generates random sentences, which is very interesting, like this one. Even with the snow falling outside, she felt it appropriate to wear her bikini. Now, some of them are funny, some others are stimulating the student's imagination, and they can stimulate either a discussion or they can be a nice lead-in for writing. And because many students often feel that they have to learn by heart a story and write it, this random sentence generator is a pleasant surprise, usually because it comes up with interesting things. Like this one, I caught my squirrel rustling through my gym bag. What would a squirrel do in a gym bag? And why would it be there? They might need a bit help and some guidance with a who, what, why, how questions. But other than that, they love it. And as we said earlier, you can try collaborative writing using sharing a Word document or a Google document and inviting students to write their stories. You can even have competitions and you can invite students to write the best one on the school blog. Now, as we're running out of time, another thing that I find interesting is asking students to solve puzzles. What shape comes next? It has to do with their thinking skills. You might have students who might not like the language, but still they're in your online classroom, and they have to participate one way or another. I once attended a Mario Revolutionary presentation, and he said clearly, you might have people who are good at maths, you might have people who are good at other fields, and they don't necessarily enjoy being in a language class. However, you can make their time there more interesting, more challenging, if you bring it closer to their field of interest. This is an interesting site that you might want to use. After a certain point, most sites are not free, but at least with some puzzles, with some problems, you can use them for free. Before we finish, let me share some tips that you might find useful when you teach online. The first thing that you need to do is to explore the full potential of the platform you use. There are certain things that you can do with some platforms, but you can't do them with others. Sometimes you can't even use what you intended to because they might not have these features, or there might be a different version. A few months ago, I was about to give a webinar, and I thought that I could have a breakout room activity. The very last moment, I found, thank God it was before the webinar, that this version did not cater for breakout rooms. So I had to redesign the whole webinar. Take one step at a time. I know it seems like a Herculean task. There are so many things that need to be done, but Rome was not built in a day. Try to master things gradually. Try to use one tool at a time, because sometimes when we're trying to achieve everything, we achieve nothing. Spice up the lesson with short activities. Whenever you feel your students are tired, whenever you feel that they need a short break, but you can't have it, give them some short activities, like the activities we did now. Try to vary the forms of interaction. Listening to the sound of your voice might be boring even for you. Try to give them the opportunity to express themselves. And because I know that at some point it's quite difficult to cope with the technical part, with changing slides, with swapping from one tool to another, you can easily appoint an assistant if necessary. Most tech-savvy students would be more than willing to help you. And if you trust them, you can always give them the opportunity. You can appoint them as co-hosts or as co-administrators, and they can take the technical part off your shoulders. This will allow you to focus a bit more on what you have to do. And this will also allow you to be more, to take more easily notice of what your students do, to observe your class, so that the next time things can go better. And of course, have a plan B when technology fails. I know it sounds too much work, but one way or another, technology is likely to fail because of poor internet, because of lack of compatibility. It could be a million reasons. I'm not saying that you should, I'm not trying to discourage you from using technology, but always have a plan B whenever things go wrong. I know that I talked about teenagers, but I didn't really say much about higher levels. For those of us following the Common European Framework, C1 and C2 levels obviously need something more than that. If you try the BBC site, you can find lots of articles, lots of programs, videos, you name it, and podcasts, which seem to be quite popular with many students, particularly the audio types. And they're free, they're safe, the BBC site is safe, and students can actually download them and they can listen to them on their mobile phones. It doesn't have to be done in front of the whole family. You can invite them to listen to part of it, and then the rest can be done at home. Or, as we mentioned earlier, the flipped classroom, they could actually listen to different parts of the podcast, and then they can discuss in class what the podcast was about, bridging this information gap. Articles. There are many articles. Some of them are humorous, some of them are factual, some of them giving opinion. It's an ideal opportunity now that your students are dying to read about what's happening all over the world, to give them extra practice. Now, here are some useful tools. Because this one was recorded, I couldn't use Mentimeter or Kahoot or quizzes. These are all tools that allow you to interact with your students, get their responses, and if we talk about Kahoot and quizzes, students have the opportunity to get instant feedback. They gamify learning, and they can make boring tasks such as multiple choice. They allow you to attract the students' attention, and at the same time help them revise. There's Puppet Pulse, as we mentioned earlier. I apologize for the glitch on the slide. Plot Generator is another very interesting tool that helps students build their own stories by providing vocabulary. I think it's worth exploring that. The Random Word Generator that we saw earlier. These are all tools that can help you. I have not included the virtual tours, but if you try on a search engine virtual tours and you have museums or tombs, Egyptian tombs, you can find many. I would like to thank you. I know that I can't answer the questions because this is a recording, but you can find me either on LinkedIn, or you can find me, you can email me at diprimalis@gmail.com. I hope you enjoyed the presentation and you found something useful to take into your classroom tomorrow. Thank you very much for being here with me, and let me wish you the very best with your classes. Thank you very much for being with me.